going to do something really fun. And if you don't mind, actually, do you mind just like saying what the character traits are on the back of your sheet?
For both?
Yeah, if you want to start with your guru, your ideal.
Well, I didn't really understand necessarily too well initially what you meant by an ideal being. I thought you meant initially like how I envision myself, or how, like, ideally what that would mean.
Okay.
So I was a little lost initially in searching for what I was trying to do, but something, if I could be anything or whatever, like a being I admire the most or something is like a bird. I always thought a bird is so, although not necessarily intelligent on a grand scale, it's free. They're always just flying around, going from point A to point B and going around. So I drew what is supposed to be like an eagle, a strong bird, something that has respect, not just from the animal world, but from even people like you and I, who respect the class, the elegance of what it is, and it has this. So what I wrote is respected, strong, and free, for the ideal being. For the button pusher, one of my biggest just things that annoy me is the traffic, one, in the city, and more so than the traffic, but the people driving in the city. There are so many, in the words I use to describe it, are inconsiderate, entitled, and frustrating. The picture I drew is a car running a red light, and I see that happen every single day. The light turns red, myself, I'm in the crosswalk, and a car just blows right through and nearly hits me. And it's very frustrating and it feels like they have no regard for anybody. They're not even paying attention. And it's frustrating when I myself try to be very, very aware of all my surroundings and take into consideration the accounts of everybody around me. And there are people, thousands and thousands and thousands of them every day, that just don't care. It's not important enough to them to consider the elements around them. All that matters is them in that moment. Doesn't matter who they affect, what happens as a result. All that matters is what's happening in that moment, which is how it benefits them. And I know that's just one example of running a red light, but that's...
Well, it sounds like it really encompasses the aspect of something that really, button pusher, like without using the exact wording, but some of them you've used the character traits that you've put here, that it possesses, the inconsiderate, entitled, and frustrating. And I'm very curious, and maybe after we do this next part, we could talk a little bit more about both sides, including the ideal self and the button pusher. So, thank you for sharing that. What I'm going to ask you to do is, I'm going to move this out of the way. And we're going to do something that may feel a little bit risky. It might feel a little bit different than something that you would normally do. I'm going to ask that you remind yourself of your confidentiality and confidence well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this around for you if you're comfortable with me touching your paper. I'm going to ask you to put this in your hand, and we're going to stand. At this point, I'm going to be behind the camera because I'm going to need to hold on to it as we're both going to be standing, but acknowledge that I'm still here in this presence with you. So if you don't mind going ahead and grabbing that and standing up.
How do you want me to hold it?
I would like you to hold it in a way that you are able to look at both of those pictures that you've created. So something that you...
You need to see it?
I do not need to see it. All right, so I'm taking a step back. Now I want you to look at the ideal being, and I want you to imagine if you were that ideal being, And if you were that ideal being, how would you move? So I'm going to ask you to kind of walk around in the small space that we have and kind of see how that being would move if you were that being.
Can I do this to my side?
Yeah, if you're comfortable that you can think of your ideal being without looking at the picture, then absolutely. And if it were making sounds of any kind, what do you think it would sound like?
I don't know if I can make the sound it would make. But for all intents and purposes, very dominant kind of screeching of an eagle is kind of how I anticipate it.
Would you mind trying for me?
Sure. I don't even know how to mimic that sound, but something to the effect of like a or something like that.
Sure. So I'm going to ask you to take about 10 seconds to get a little more comfortable doing that.
Okay.
It's lovely. All right, so now I'm going to ask you to think about the button pusher. You can take a look at the picture again if you're more comfortable starting by looking at the picture. I'm going to ask you to start moving as if you were the button pusher. What would it move like?
It wouldn't move at all. It'd be sitting in traffic.
Not any gesture of movement at all?
I don't know how to express it. If I were the button pusher, there's not necessarily a movement I can associate with something like this particular emotion that I feel, and what it causes me to feel, or what they do in terms of like how it causes me to feel.
Can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Try to embody the button pusher, and just maybe if it's easier to close your eyes, just kind of through your body, not necessarily through words, feel how it would move, even if it's something really, really small. But what we're looking for is kind of an authentic feel.
Just see it kind of storming around, it's like pushing its way through. And, the most important person here and nothing else matters, shove everything else out of the way.
Do you think it would be making any sounds or talking at all?
Get out of my way. Excuse me. Very aggressive. Best way I can think of it.
Okay. And one more thing. If you could imagine these two beings dialoguing with one another, can you take about 30 seconds or so? I know this may feel less than comfortable, but again, you're in a confident circle. And if you could take 30 seconds to a minute and just come up with some kind of dialogue between the two and act out that dialogue between the two.
Okay. Act out the dialogue between two.
Try not to think too hard about it. Just let it come up authentically through your body and your sound.
I understand. It's just difficult because the two, how incredibly different the two people are.
That is very interesting.
would want to do is just roam free and enjoy its space and not bother anybody and just kind of be in its own and embracing the world and enjoying the world. And along comes this other mean bully bird and bumps into him and pushes him out of the way, and the bird can't really understand why that happened, and he's kind of taken back and he looks at him and says, "What was that for? I don't understand." And the other guy doesn't really have a response. He just keeps on going. He has his own track, and even if he did have, I anticipate if he had something to say, either he would realize the error of his ways and apologize and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm caught off guard," or he'd be rather rude about it and fault the bystander for no reason. That's about.
Can I see you act that out? Like, actually be the bird for a minute and be the button pusher getting in its way?
How do I be both at the same time?
Imagine you were able to flip between two characters. Let's say you're enacting a scene for a friend that you really need to show them how one side and the other interacted with one another. And it's just you trying to show this to a friend. So you need to be both. How would you do that?
Watch where you're going. Watch where I'm going. I was just minding my own business and you came crashing into me.
Hey, that was really good.
I do not know what else to do.
Well, I think that was really good, and if you're comfortable, we can stop there.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.